Thank you for joining us once again here on Middle Class Macro. My name is John, joined once again by my co-host and good friend, business partner, Steven. Today, we're going to go over a few notes that happened with the Fed meeting in terms of the basis point jump, how that affects the average person, and the chain effect that's going to have in our overall economy. So, Steven, I know that today when Powell was talking, something that I thought was interesting I saw on Twitter was someone mentioned the word pain a lot. That seemed to be the real thread of this meeting. It's just that, hey, things are about to get rough. And I know we've been talking about how things are going to get rough for a while, but now even the Fed's admitting it. So that's a very interesting point here.
Well, they even admitted it back in the Jackson Hole, Wyoming meeting. They said that they would have to continue raising rates and it would start getting painful. And they probably, but like, you know, with if you compare the projection back then to now, like they weren't expecting to get as painful as it's probably gonna get.
The number was far lower. They first inflation was transitory, and then it was, you know, and it was they projected a much lower number than we're experiencing, I believe, right now. If I recall right, let me just double check that again. Yes, 8.3 is the inflation rate at the moment, is what is at least stated as the inflation rate.
As far as I'm concerned, like it's probably closer to fucking 25. Excuse my language. Probably closer to 25 to 35%, in my opinion.
Right. No, absolutely.
Yeah. Because I mean, the gas really just go up year over year, 8.3%. No, it's gone up much higher than that.
So once again, so like from a middle class perspective too, on that with gas prices, I feel it's one of the things that people notice the quickest and easiest of all things, because I noticed the moment when it took $100 to fill up my gas tank here in California. I was like, whoa, this all of a sudden just changed everything. This is no longer just, you know, before it's almost like a groceries, like, hey, it's just something I got to go get. I'm gonna go pick it up, you know, go get some gas. Now it's like, you have to make a financial decision about how much you're going to fill up your gas tank in terms of your budget. And that's really hard when you don't have any other options but to drive places.
Oh yeah. And I mean, with how often we consume gas just because we need to drive everywhere, like, you know, it's inevitable that you're going to start like noticing that crunch. Like, but at the same time, I feel like I can't say some, but like you can already tell that a lot of the wealthier people have already adjusted.
Yes.
But like for people like us, it's a struggle. Like you said, you know, we have to decide between, like, we have to really, really budget really well on everything, like really plan out every single dollar just to make sure that we don't overextend ourselves, and fucking next thing you know, the next month we can, you know, lights are out because we can fucking pay it.
Right. No, that's a real concern that the average person is having right now. On top of that, you know, credit card debt's going up significantly amongst the average household just to keep pace. You know, like I thought it was very interesting when the pandemic started. One of the things that everyone did, myself included, actually, was eliminate as much debt as possible. I think the atmosphere at the time just made you feel like, oh, I do not want this on me anymore with what's going on, losing, you know, everyone losing their job and everything for a moment there till unemployment kicked in, and just how crazy everything got. And now everyone's taken on that debt and then some. And it only took, you know, what are we at now? 2 years since, not even 2 years since all the bailout money came out, realistically. I think it's still been less than 2 years since all that. And we're already starting to feel an inflationary effect of that and all the bailout that happened during COVID for, you know, all the government stimulus programs during that time.
Oh yeah, like in the first place, like I know it was necessary for the money. You know, I guess in hindsight, when you think about things in hindsight, it wasn't necessary. We didn't need to lock down as much as we had to and whatnot. But like, when you're in the moment, you're not thinking about that. Like you're thinking, everybody's about to die. We need to fucking do things to cope this and blah 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 and all that shit. And you know, so nobody's thinking straight.
Yeah, that's really it there too. No one's thinking rationally through all this. Absolutely.
But yeah, no, like, but because of that, you know, we're I hate thinking about this because it's like for me, it's not as bad. Like I don't even know.
It's hard to say because it's like while you're going through it, it's hard to even like imagine like what you were thinking then to what you were thinking now, and like hindsight of it all, and trying to rationalize a lot of the decisions that weren't rational at that time. Like, you think about like, well, the whole point of today's meeting with the Fed meeting was raising the Fed funds rate by 75 basis points. But you think about when the pandemic started, that's when rates went to basically zero. Yes. Essentially zero during that time. So there was just literally free money during this 2-year period of time. I think here, let me go ahead. I'm just going to share the screen real quick here, just so I can have it up on here. Yes, you know what I mean? And the debt's no longer about to be cheap anymore, which is what we're really seeing now. And real quick, I just want to make sure, Steve, are you seeing the screen?
Oh yeah. The government had a chance to pay off a lot of debt that they incurred over the years at a cheap rate, but it's too late to be able to do that now.
Right.
They can't service any of that debt, or they can, but it's not gonna.
It's what the debt rate you're at right now. You're already looking like it's already over 100%. I know that when countries go into default, it's usually when you go over, I think it was 130% of your GDP is your debt. That really is like a pivotal point where you're now just paying off interest at that point, just keeping afloat. If you look at this too, the Fed funds rate was only exactly where we're at now pre-COVID, basically. We're at if it's like 2.75, I believe it's what we're supposed to be at now as of today. And right before the pandemic hit, we were right. This is when the repo crisis happened, and everything kind of got a little crazy in the finance world. And then to take everything down here to to 0% rates, cheap money afloat. Now we have repercussions.
Oh, 1 second, sorry. Someone keeps knocking.
Absolutely.
On my door. Cannot wait to have my own place again.
I fully understand the peace of mind I have. Paying for half this bedroom is definitely worth it. I definitely
I've been
get
starting to think lately, might be worth it to start to push my budget a bit to.
Not if you've gotten your debt under control, man, I would recommend it, because like peace of mind is if you're trying to grow, you're gonna have trouble there. Just throwing that out there.
It's been tough. It's been tough. It's not even just like, I mean, my nephew, that's whatever.
Yeah,
he's a kid, but it's just like, it's mainly the parent thing.
Yes, that was my main thing too.
They have the mentality that because I work from home, that means I'm always available.
They don't respect it. They don't respect it properly. Yeah.
And then they'll act like, they'll knock on my door and stuff like that. If I don't respond, I won't respond because I'm doing my work and I have a headset on. And then they'll just knock even harder. And like when I open the door, say, "Oh, were you working?" I'm like, I want to say, I want to yell, like not yell, but I'm like, I was working.
Yeah.
Well, I was working.
Right. You know what I mean? No, that same thing, getting my door banged on, just, being constantly available for stuff. And then, sometimes my niece just like, well, I guess I'm doing this tonight, I'm hanging out with you now. You know what I mean? Like, it's, love family and everything, but we're grown men. So like getting away from home I needed that sincerely. So I totally get if you're at that point, man.
Yeah, I
totally get that.
I miss being on my own already. Well, I've always missed it for a while, but it's like, it's gotten to a point where I feel like, no, it's time again. I'm trying to be as patient as possible.
Right.
But, I'm trying to wait till my mom retires. She retires in December. So that was, there's someone else that can take my nephew and stuff like that.
I see. You're just trying to wait at the end of the year just so you can be available for this. For like to watch your nephew or something.
Yeah. So basically that's the main reason I'm staying around, which is fine. I don't mind. But like, when it involves the other stuff, it's like, fuck, I know it takes so much.
Yeah. No, actually. Hey, man, you know what I mean? I would just say start working on it now, because, if you start looking at places now, by December, you might find the right spot.
Oh, yeah, I'm always looking, dude. I'm always a truly on realtor, looking at rents and home prices.
So are we. And let me tell you, man, rental game is shitty out here. $4,000 for a 4-bedroom place is what we're looking at.
That is shitty.
And that's not even like super nice. Yeah, $4,000. That's in our area. That's probably going with $4,000 for a 4-bedroom place.
Damn. This is Orange County.
Yeah, Orange County. Yeah.
Right, man.
That's the real problem is that like, man, like rents are not going down for people, man. Like I said, I'm paying $900 a month to split a bedroom out here. This shit is stupid. It's stupid.
Yeah. The rental rates haven't reflected yet. Well, it's going to take a while to reflect because
I think it's going to take a lot longer to reflect. Even if there is a downturn in housing, though, it's like one of those things where like a lot of these places, a lot of these like BlackRock and whatnot, these large corporations that are picking up on these properties, especially these distressed ones, are picking up on right now. They're just turning us into a nation of renters, man. And then they can just keep the rent high forever because everyone's renting now. So it's like,
yeah,
they got you on a lease, dog. Yeah.
But they're not expecting. I don't think they were expecting people to, move in with family and stuff like that to be able to avoid that. And I mean, I'm just gonna get to like, because with the higher, with the interest rates getting higher, it is gonna force home prices to go down.
Right.
So it's gonna, but it's gonna take a few years. I think the forecast for them to actually, when they will, consider actually pivoting from raising rates is like end of 2024.
Yep.
So
which is what I was thinking. 2025 is probably the process of what we're going through right now, at least the first phase of it. 2025 sounds about right.
So I mean, if you're actually prepared by then, you might be able to swoop in because housing prices will be cheaper.
Right.
And by then, if they do pivot at that point, housing prices will be cheaper and rates will be going down again.
Right. No, absolutely. So it could be a good timing overall. That's one of the things that we're talking about too, is we're hoping that at least in terms of the renters market, we start catching while this recession starts to hit. Unfortunately, people, are having trouble keeping up and everything. People who are landlords are going to have trouble keeping good tenants. So I'm hoping that at least opens up more for opportunity for us to rent better. You know what I mean? So
yeah,
that's sad that's where we're at, because we're at that point in our lives where we should be looking at investing in the property, and we're totally priced out, entirely priced out.
Like at these rates, Chuck Baroni was saying that at these rates, home prices would have to come down to about 300 to 350 for them to be affordable for the average middle class resident.
Jeez. Yeah, no, but then with higher interest rates too, your actual payment is gonna be high. So it's like, you know what I mean? It's even though the housing might go down, so like maybe your benefits that now your down payment's less to get into it, which is nice, but still like your interest rate is gonna be so high on your loan that like your payment's gonna be just as high as if it was worth what it is today. This is why no one understands this, though. This is why like housing rates are so important, and understanding why the interest rate on what you get a home loan at is so important, because that determines everything. It's not even what the house is worth, it's what you owe, at the end of the day.
Because people just see it as a number. They don't see it as like, you have to see it as sort of like the interest rate being the price of your loan in a sense.
Right.
If that makes sense.
Exactly. No, it absolutely does. And which, since I have the chart up here, you know what I mean? Like it over sales. No, wait, actually. Do I have, because there was one that had the rate. Yeah. So existing home sales and the 30-year fixed mortgage. So, you know what I mean? Like if you just look at like the change over this, 4.49, 4.20. And then like we're down here, 2.69 during, the pandemic, 3.08
sales.
Yeah. And, that obviously that just coincides right there with it. This is where the average person, like, which my dad was even one of the people that came up on that. He refinanced during this time, and he was like, it's like I took 60 grand off my mortgage, and I'm like, I get it for you. I'm glad that it worked out, but now we're here on this side. You know what I mean? This is a higher interest rate than we've had over the last, I guess this is 5 years here. So do we have 10? Oh wow, it goes all the way back to the 80s. Got you. So look at that, a 17% interest rate in the 1981. But think about
at the same time, home prices were probably about like 50 grand.
Yeah, like getting a home was like an average price. And even though I would say the 1980s is really when we went away from a manufacturing economy to like this like consumer service type economy. At least we had an economy then. Now we literally have not like we talked about in our last episode. Like our new economy is, people drive in Ubers, driving people to do, Uber Eats or something like that. Like, like that's what our economy is, like temporary gig at the moment. Like we don't even make anything anymore.
No.
There's no option to have something that justifies, having an interest rate this high on a 30-year fixed mortgage made sense at this time, because the average consumer was making a real wage that was consistent, and then on top of that we had prices that weren't out of control. We had a strong economy that could work off that. You know what I mean? For as many things as I didn't like about the administration at that time, at least it was a strong economy. But like now we have the exact opposite, and we're going into rate hikes. And think about it, we're only right here. This isn't even as high as 2006. 2006 is still higher. Here's 2000 is still higher. We have so much more to climb that we could go in interest rates that are far beyond what we're at right now. And this is already about to collapse the housing market. That's how weak it is right now.
Jeez, I'm just
saying. Yeah, like when you really think about that in the broad scope of it, that's crazy. That's crazy, honestly. And then you see these little spikes in home sales, and now we're on the downward trend of that. And I guess we could end up somewhere like here, like the 2009, 2010, when things really started to bottom. Ideally, this is where we're going to come in, but
because when it bottomed, they were dropping interest rates, but now, we're going to bottom. And they're raising interest rates,
right?
And it's just like, wow, geez.
But look at this mania right here. We're coming off of one peak to this trough, and then from there up to another peak, just like this. It just seems to me that we're gonna hit this next trough that's somewhere in the same area again for housing prices. And I know that a lot of us, especially millennials, are thinking this is when I'm gonna buy a home, like the Gen Xers of 2008 to 2011 did, is that they went out and bought homes at this time when they were so low. But I wonder with the things like BlackRock and all these giant corporations that are now basically, getting out of other investments and putting it into real estate, tangible assets. I wonder how that affects everything, because that was not a major factor in the GFC back in 2008. That's a whole different situation with today.
Because they actually didn't start getting in until after that, and it's a bit different because even with how much they spent on buying properties, it's still actually a small fraction compared to the Reventure Consulting brought it up. He was saying that despite the fact that they got it's not BlackRock but Blackstone, I think it was
Blackstone, yeah.
They got together about $50 billion in financing to buy houses, and Reventure. The dude from Reventure Consulting was mentioning how despite all of that, it's still just like a small fraction of the value of the entire housing market.
Right. Now, majority of people who are owners or even like your landlord are still typically average person, ma and pa. You know what I mean? Your average people who would own a home for their family or a home even for an investment. But that's what worries me about this environment, about rising inflation in a recessionary environment. These kind of people who are just keeping afloat, who maybe just have their home for the family, now they're having trouble making ends meet to keep afloat. If we're going into a downturn with a weak economy like this, and interest rates were already at zero, that was always a joke, right? Where we're going negative interest rates like Japan did. And while it seems like we've gone the opposite direction right now, think about when interest rates were being raised before, and then the repo spike happened. There's a lot of big money intertwined that dominoes around that can affect all of this. We could start seeing something of that nature start occurring with just the cheap money drying up. I think that's really something that's a real concern here.
Oh yeah, it is, because every time they've tightened the Fed, it's stuff like what happened in 2019. like happened a lot. Like it would,
right.
you know, they tighten up a little bit, things would flatten, but they were like either flatten out or just fucking, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like, whereas compared to when they were, you know, in easing mode, quantitative easing mode, as opposed to quantitative tightening, like that's when things would actually spike up higher.
That was crazy. And that's, you know, when they started doing quantitative tightening, they started raising rates. I think it was 28. I mean, I believe I have the chart here. 2018. So effective Fed funds rate. Yes. So yes, right here. So right here. So we're at near zero once again. So this whole, we hit, you know, the GFC, and then we take, you know, the funds rate, and then we start doing quantitative easing. So we were already at zero before, basically. You know, we basically had cheap money holding up the 2010s decade. Since the GFC, we start trying to tighten a little bit, and then we have the repo spike, which is really the thing that was meaningful in this time period, and then the pandemic, which gave us a reason to go back down here again. And here we are again. That makes you wonder. I'm like, if quantitative tightening and raising interest rates led to a overnight lending repo crisis, which if I were to relate that back to why that would matter to non-institutional people, non-institutional investors, when you put your money into a money market account, this is where it goes into these, you know, overnight repurchase markets. And that's something where if that went crazy when we lifted interest rates last time, what happens this time when we have a much weaker economy is really where I think is the concern here when you look at this in an overall sense.
Mm-hmm. Have there been any theories on that? Like what would happen? Like how much devastation?
I feel that a favorite of ours, Gregory Mannarino, definitely would have a few things to say on that. But yeah, not many people, definitely not the mainstream. The mainstream is not processing that part at all. In fact, when the reverse repo market crisis happened, they were kind of uninvolved, honestly, too. It was not as big of a deal as it should have been. I remember that.
Yeah, I think it just went over a lot of their heads. Like they didn't even realize what was going on. They just knew that like, you know, they saw what was it? Because what happened at that? Because I don't know how much the market fell at that time, but like they saw that happening. They just feel like, you know,
yes,
like a lot of people don't know about Fed fund rate and stuff.
Right. Like yes. No, that's not something that's common. And even now it's not common to the average person. But like 2019, I remember had a lot of red flags going on because everyone kind of forgets life, honestly, before COVID at this point. It's, you know, been such a significant change and how everything has been restructured and how everything's, you know, now you're in a new situation with everything. But in 2019, we had a lot of red flags coming up all over the place. You know, a lot of things were slowing down. A lot of problems were starting to happen. There are a lot of the revolutions you're starting to see happen now over, you know, different reasons around the world were happening from a financial perspective back in about 2019 as well, until everyone got locked down. So I feel like now that the world is no longer in lockdown, we've moved past, COVID's officially over, as per what Joe Biden has said this week. So now I almost feel like it's like now the floodgates are open for all the problems that we kind of locked up during COVID, and now they're back, and those affect real people. I know as of today, men in Russia, I believe, you know, anyone who's of drafting age is no longer able to fly out of the country. There are escalations happening right now in the world that I think are coinciding a lot with like what we kind of stopped with COVID, and it's coming back now for sure. We'll have to see what happens with that story, obviously, but that is something I read today about in Russia specifically.
Damn, yeah, because the world didn't like, I guess, you know, beginning of 2020, the world we were just that, you know, we were just paused. That's it.
Yeah. And that never happened before. And I think that's the problem, is that a lot of people forgot about life prior to COVID. And, you know, even the war that we're seeing right now with Russia and Ukraine, that was not something new. 2014, when the plane, you know, landed in that disputed territory in Ukraine, that was a major point in a contention there that a lot of people have already forgotten about. You know, this is not new. And I feel like now that the world's undoing lockdown and there's no longer restrictions, we're kind of getting back to the business that we've all forgotten about the last couple of years. And think about that. War affects the common person more than anything.
Yeah, it's not just with Russia too.
Taiwan and China as well. Yes.
Blow up again as well. And we haven't really, like, actually, one thing I've been worried about, we haven't really heard much about since the lockdown is Hong Kong.
Yes.
Remember they had those huge protests going on.
They had massive protests where, yes, they did not want to be assimilated into China the way that President Xi is essentially doing. And that's all coming to fruition. I mean, Joe Biden, I believe, on 60 Minutes last weekend was saying that if China put boots on the ground in Taiwan, that he would use U.S. intervention on that as well.
And think about despite the fact that, you know, the rest of the administration has been saying that they believe they respect the one China policy. It's weird, dude.
It's weird place. I don't know where everything's at on this, but I do know that if a hot war really escalates here, guess who gets drafted? Your average middle class person, you know. And I mean, like, that's talk about the economy for people who are still at home. You know, if we were talking about inflation now, think about inflation then.
Well, with that, I feel like if we were like any other country, it would be like that. But like, because we basically instituted career military people, like, we don't have to worry about draft as much. You know what I mean?
True. I would hope as much on that too. But I do read about a recruiting crisis.
The military, I'd still be worried.
Yes,
because are you gonna really be threatened by a girl named Becky who identifies as a squirrel with blue hair with a, you know, I mean, are you gonna really be threatened by someone who looks like that?
I mean, it would be very surprising. You see them on the battlefield, and it's very very surprising. Give it that much. Oh man. But like, think about though, like the average if war happens, think what happens to good. Think what happens to at the supply chain crisis now has already been a problem. If hot wars really start, talk about hard line stops on certain things, you know, that changes entire economies and how people have to pivot.
It does. Though I feel like there's been a few companies who have been kind of preparing for that. I forget which company it was. Some tech company though. They're getting ready to open. I think they're getting ready to open a manufacturing plant for so we can start manufacturing chips and stuff like that here.
Right? Yeah. That makes absolute sense. And I mean, once again,
this has been a big push to actually do more manufacturing within the US
here in the States. Yeah. No, that's huge for me too, because I run a phone repair company as well, and that's a major contention point. I'm always paying attention to the Taiwan story with China specifically, because, you know, semi-processor chips are produced in Taiwan. You know, your iPhone's produced there essentially. Everyone's iPhone is produced there, and I've said that a lot of reasons why Apple's been making the moves they've been making is because they don't have the same resources available as they did pre-pandemic, pre-COVID. And that's affecting consumers greatly. You know, like I see with people not being able to, if you want to get a new iPhone nowadays, I don't think that's going to be something that's going to be as good of a value for one. And I don't think it's going to be something that's going to be affordable for the average person either. And that's a staple now of a consumer good, you know?
Well, I mean, won't be affordable, but they'll still be able to get it because now we're at a point where we're leasing phones.
Yeah. So no, that's true.
Yeah. No one outright buys, you know, fully pays for a phone anymore. It's all, well, I mean, that's not really their fault though. It's by design. Like,
no,
these phone companies
right.
made it that way. We're now leasing, you know, we're now having to basically lease our phones until it's fully paid off.
Did you know there's actually there's a, like, you know how they have like a firm to pay for things that you can't afford, you know, on credit payments basically. Yeah, so they have something like that for food now. I saw it on, and I was like, you can literally take a loan on food you're gonna order basically and pay it off in payments.
I think I heard about that.
Yeah, and that's literally indentured servitude. If you want to talk about a way of decimating people so they no longer can build wealth or build, you know, anything, a middle class, like, you know, like we keep saying, indentured servitude to just eat and survive, which is where we're already at, you know, renting. We're already renting for survival.
Yeah.
You know, that's driving the poor aren't going to be as affected because if you're already in poverty, your standard kind of is going to be somewhere around the same. It's the middle class who had something. They're going to notice a noticeable difference of actual drop in lifestyle to the poor, essentially. you know?
Much, yeah. It's
Hmm.
it's shit. No. Fuck, I forgot. Yeah, sorry. I lost my train of thought. Shit, what were we just talking about? Sorry.
Oh no, just the indentured servitude for you know, everything.
Yeah, and like they're not gonna like what sucks about it is they're not really gonna even realize that it's basically indentured servitude. They're just gonna figure, well, it's just the it's just the way things are now. It's gonna be normalized having to, basically be in debt just to pay for almost everything from your phone to basically the fucking loan you took out to buy groceries.
Right. Loan you took out to buy groceries, right? It's not even just a loan for a vehicle anymore. It's a loan on everything. You will own nothing and be happy. That is the epitome of it.
Pretty much, yeah. How can you own something if you're always constantly having to in debt to it, trying to pay it off? Like,
right. No, I feel like that was why Squid Games resonated with so many people, honestly, is that this idea, while it is science fiction at this point, it sure feels like we're somewhere along that path, with how things are getting for the average person trying to survive now.
I'm surprised that hasn't become real life. I'm surprised some rich dude hasn't like, oh, are you in debt? Well, why don't you come compete for it? Why don't you come compete for somebody to pay off your debt?
Right. I mean, Hunger Games. So may the forces be forever in your favor. Is that what it was? I believe so. May the odds be forever in your favor. Right.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. That was it. Yeah. May the odds forever be in your favor. Yeah. That's about right. There's the new middle class in the Hunger Games.
Oh my gosh. Like I'm surprised, I'm legit surprised we haven't gotten that dystopian yet. Because I mean, because I feel like it's kind of that kind of thing has been looming for a while.
Right.
We haven't got to a point where governments want to stop young people from becoming revolutionaries by forcing them into battle royales with each other and fucking on some island where they have explosive collars around their neck, like in battle royale.
Yeah, no, that sound about it. Honestly, this is why all these movies resonate. Like I said, I feel like the chains of debt, I think are we're all very aware of what we're in this, and if you think about that, like, and how that ties just how not being able to pull yourself out of it, just to tie back to today's Fed meeting again, if the unemployment rate right now is being reported as 3.7%, which is laughable. Incredibly laughable at this point. But if Jerome Powell is saying that we basically need to double this unemployment rate to keep, because there's so many available jobs, in hindsight,
what's the U6 rate, U6 unemployment rate? Because there's multiple levels. I think the main one that's reported is like the U3 or U4.
So 7%. Okay, so the U6 is reporting 7% right now, which even 7% feels like very low. I would say the average person who, if you ask them in the middle class, I would say most people say probably 20% at least with how bad things are nowadays, with how much struggle everyone's in. I know Shadow Stats would have a number on that. Let me see. Do you have that one by chance, Stephen?
What was that? Sorry.
Do you remember?
What was that?
Unemployment rate here? Yeah, no, I was saying, because I know Shadow Stats will sometimes give you an unemployment rate that reflects not just, because I know that this U6 unemployment rate only counts people who have been out of work for the past 2 years, and if you're beyond that, then you're no longer counted, which is the most insane thing to me. That's just your count is giving up. It's like, no, that's still a human being that is out of work and unable to. Now they're homeless. Like, does that mean they just go into a different metric for you? It's they still count as unemployed.
Sure. Mind if I share my screen real quick?
Absolutely. Let me go ahead and give that back to you here.
All right. So here we go. As you can see,
Shadow Stats. Yeah,
it is 25%. which I
20,
feel
yeah, exactly.
seems a bit more realistic, actually.
Absolutely. I would say, yeah, a quarter of all people who are adults in our society right now being unemployed or at least underemployed, at best, sounds absolutely accurate. Absolutely.
Gosh, we never went back down to freaking pre-2020 levels, and that's how bad
we are not, and you can tell, like you can see that slant there in that chart. It's stable. It's not going lower, like we're not, if anything, I expect to see that start to U-shape up a little more.
It's gonna, wow. Yeah, it probably will spike up. Yeah, I do actually. Holy shit, dude.
Yeah. And think of really, and that right there, if you want to talk about the main thing that would be a nail in the coffin to the middle class in this country, employment, just making a weekly wage to be check to check, which is what the majority of people in this country are now. They're check to check. They're not really saving. They're just keeping up with the bills. And, if you don't have that anymore, if you no longer can maintain that, then you're literally talking object poverty. That is really the transition of anyone who is middle class and at least treading water is now fully drowning in this economic situation.
You're lucky to be house poor.
Lucky to be house poor. Absolutely.
House poor at this point, Jesus.
That really is it now. That really is where the average person is at. It's just, it makes people become creative. I feel like while there's going to be, like Powell said, a lot of pain that we're going to experience in the housing markets, in the equity markets, in the employment markets, on the other side of this, hopefully we all figure out how to build something better than this. Now, what I worry about is bureaucracy being the thing that prevents that for people, because I feel like bureaucracy is essentially what's put us this bad. And it doesn't feel like bureaucracy is going to bring us a solution here.
No, they're just going to keep making things worse. And whether it's because they're just blatantly doing it, trying to make things worse, or they're just so stupid and
out of touch.
Honestly. They don't know what's going on. Like, that they think they're actually doing good and helping people. Like, oh my gosh! Like with this current, I hate to always sound like a Biden hater. Hey, but the main thing that really irks me about is like the way they're so blatant with
just lying. And I understand here at Middle Class Macro, we endorse no party or candidate. As far as we're concerned, no one's working for the people right now. Both Steve and I have a pretty good track record of not being a fan of pretty much anyone that's been around since we've been alive, at least. And but this administration in particular, the lying through your teeth about this feels condescending almost when we're suffering like
it's
this.
Insulting.
It is. It generally is insulting the average person.
Like when they celebrated the
Inflation
Reduction Act. It was like
a party
4 weeks ago, and that was the day the CPI came out, I believe. And they're celebrating their asses off, thinking they're doing a great thing, and CPI, the inflation is still going out of control. They're just losing their jobs. People are still completely out of touch. Quitting their jobs.
Yeah, the quiet quitting is happening because it's like, if I'm not going to make enough to keep afloat at this job and I'm falling apart, why am I somewhere where I'm miserable?
Because
like the whole.
Sorry, what were you saying?
I was just saying, we're at a point now where people are willing to be miserable because at least they got to maintain their lifestyle. But if you're not going to even give them that, it's like, what am I here for then? That's where the average person I would say is at this point.
Oh yeah. And we also can't forget, employers, because financing is tight and hiring is starting to go down. It's and the fact, there's still the fact that they're touting, we lowered gas, And that's basically all they have at this point. Even though right now it's starting to go back up, so they're about to lose that.
Right. They got down just in time for midterms coming up. Of course, it's a good political ploy.
Let's see if they can stay down. Like we'll see. Like at this point, like I don't think anything will be stay. Like I don't know if anything can save them.
Right.
Unfortunately for them, like just because they kept trying to keep a tight lid on how things were at the actual state of how things are going in this country. Like it's gotten impossible to hide. If you try to hide it, it's just basically it's an insult to the citizen's face and stuff like that. It's just it's exhausting to deal with too, because
it really is.
You get to a point
really is.
You're just like you want to fight it, but it's like with how blatant it is. It's like, is it even possible to even like
to fix this? Right.
Yeah.
Because really the moment where like everything hit the fan was 2008, back when the GFC happened, and we've been doing a kick the can moment for a long time now, and we've really milked every bit of time we can out of this, and we're really at a point now where this problem, the fact that our economy and our whole financial system at this point is inherently broken if we're just living off of cheap liquidity. If that's what's keeping the everything moving, is the fact that, once again, best meme that came out of COVID in general, money printer go burr. If that's really at its core what is keeping this going, then here's the wall. Here's where the pavement meets the dead end. It's now officially like, and the average person now can no longer ignore it, because I feel like over the last 10 years, the average person they realized their life was going down in quality, but it was enough to, you still kept up, you paid your rent, you ate food, you could ignore it. You can't ignore it now. It's too real now.
It is. I mean, you can barely, when 1 year you're buying a certain amount of groceries, and then the next year you find that you've probably either bought half the amount for that free budget, or double your budget to be able to buy the same amount. Like, no, you can't ignore something like that. It's impossible.
It's
just impossible.
Yeah, it's two in the face when it like, once again, how we keep talking about like why shadow stats is the actual real rate of inflation, not the actual CPI number, because when you take out, housing, food, energy, talk about the three things that have absolutely gone ballistic. If we just keep it to just this post-pandemic world, has gone ballistic since then, and with little to no real keep up from the average person, how is anyone supposed to even feel like there's a real like bright future ahead of this? I think everyone realizes something bad is on the horizon here, but no one knows how this is going to go, because, well, now we know to expect the unexpected with how the last 2 years have gone.
Yeah. There's only so much history that can show us what could happen. Like, especially with the situation, it's completely unprecedented. Like, we've never gone through anything exactly like this before. Like, we've gone through like, a form of it where higher interest rates, but booming economy, like you mentioned before, but never before, or like, but we've never, or even like, in the case of the Great Depression, booming economy going into a deflationary state. Right. But we're not even getting that chance. Like, we're a failing economy, going into an very inflated state. It's just the like, it's just a formula for a world of hurt, and I don't really know what else to say on that, really.
No, it's like Powell said, it's pain. It's pain coming to everyone on this, and the middle class is going to brunt the gist of the majority of that. And I think if you want to look at what is in our future, I honestly think in some regards is what's happening in Iran right now. In Iran, they're having it's a full uprising of people at the moment because cost of living has gone so insane. I know price of fuel has skyrocketed there. The average person can't live. It's similar to what we've been seeing in the EU, like Germany, in terms of like say their electricity and everything and energy costs are going to levels in different parts of the world. They're starting to have little pockets where it pops up, and that's driving people over the edge. Fuel, food, housing, and those three things are just out of control.
Jesus, the inflation rate in Iran is 52.5%.
It's insane what's happening there. There's a full-scale societal collapse happening right now.
Or no, that was in June.
Yeah.
In August, it was 54%. Holy shit, dude!
It's still rising. When eventually this gets to a point where the society can no longer stay the same. Something breaks, something changes, power moves, and I wonder what comes next is really, I think, the question where everyone, especially the middle class, is at right now, because the rich if you're rich and you're smart, you're doing something to shield you from this. If you're poor, it's almost like it's irrelevant because you're already in the place where you could fall to. But the middle class, the people who are the backbone of our nation specifically, but the world really, it's insecurity, which I think is also a massive part of the mental health crisis that a lot of people our age and older than us too. I'm not going to even act like it's just millennials, but everyone's experiencing right now. I think financial insecurity is really leading to a lot of the mental health crisis we're having because when your finances aren't right, it's hard to feel comfortable in anything in life.
Oh yeah, it's hard to feel comfortable, hard to think straight, it's hard to think about anything else other than how are you gonna be able to pay this or that this next month.
Right.
And no one should have to live like that. Really.
No, it's really not right. The goal, to touch on it almost a little bit like when equity is talked a lot about now. I think ideally when equity is talked about, we're talking about bringing people who are poor up to the higher standard of life that at least the middle class leads, if nothing else. You know what I mean? So everyone is at least a stronger baseline. But I feel like equity is being achieved by lowering everyone to the lower ranks instead. And that almost feels like the way this is going, intended or unintended, is for everyone to decide on their own. But it does see that that's how this is being achieved now at this point for most of us.
That makes sense. It's easier to, lower a higher tier class of people to lower standards than it is to raise a lower tier class of people to higher standards.
Absolutely.
Costs a lot less too.
Costs a lot less if that's your goal. Absolutely. It's a real shame, and I think right now this is why all of us who are the middle class or former middle class at this point are really just fighting to figure out is how do I survive through this for one, and how do I put myself on a life path to thrive? And it just feels like the options that have been available to people for at least memorable history for generations who are alive now, those options do not seem to be available for us anymore. And now it becomes a question of, well, what now? What do us, the average people, the middle class, do now?
I don't. At this point in time, I don't even know because you can't tell them to sit and wait because
inflation's killing that.
Yeah, and I mean, really, all they can really do is just really try to prep themselves with knowledge. That's really the only thing. It's the cheapest thing to do. And at the end of this, when we do finally reach that light at the end of the tunnel and all this, like it will help in the end. But like when it comes to actually going through all this, I don't even know. Like,
of course, it's the $1 million question right there. Absolutely.
Because if you're waiting for this, you wait. You tell them to wait. that's waiting for waiting for yourself to lose the job, you lose your job, waiting for yourself to not be able to pay your bills anymore, waiting for yourself to not lose your home, waiting yourself to be out on the street. Like basically that's what it is.
Right.
So
just inevitable.
So I mean, really, at this point, it's about gathering the knowledge that you feel you need to gather, and finding out what you can do with that knowledge. Actually, it might be a good idea. Like, any chance you can bring up, because you sent it to me a while back, the industries and jobs that fare better during
recessions and I believe that was Patrick Bet David Valuetainment channel. I saw that on. I don't know if I'll be able to pull that up right now. Let's see, but that was something I do remember seeing. And once again, I think one thing that I've taken from, I remember from that specifically, that I've taken from it that I put into my own life, was service-based businesses tend to survive through major downturns because people still need things done. So I think that's still one outlet, which even though now the availability, liquidity of money to borrow to be able to start a business with now might become hard to actually achieve, which is another hindrance, of course. But one of the few avenues I think a lot of common people still have is starting a service-based business, that is in demand. Phone repair is the one that I've personally chosen. My family is actually locksmiths, which is another type that tends to survive these downturns. But that really is one of the few things that you can actually depend on will be a good idea. I would argue on that.
Okay. So would you say it probably might be a good idea? Like in that case, would it be? Sorry, my nephew is screaming.
No problem. Yeah.
But would it be a good idea now, since it's going to be a lot harder to be able to even get a business loan and stuff like that at this point right now for the time being? Maybe possibly wherever a person is currently employed, to possibly start putting a percentage of that money aside as capital for their business.
Absolutely. If you have the ability to save money right now, the first thing would probably be consumer debt. If you're buried in that, figure out what you got to do to get out of that. That's, step one, obviously, is which I understand right now, people are using debt more and more to keep themselves afloat through the situation. Consumer debt is probably the main thing killing a lot of people right now. If you don't need that car, if you don't need that, if you can get rid of that credit card, that would be best. And then, yes, if you can actually put some money aside to build up a business, really establish something, file it properly, and try and actually, because I know there are a lot of places giving out. Erica Williams, I know that you and I both have learned from and studied from. We'll talk a lot about, there are a lot of options for getting a business loan now that aren't from a traditional bank. And that really, I think, is the move nowadays. It's just, get something established and try and get some capital raised so you can make it move. Once the machine moves, man, it's just let it run, But I think that's the hard part, is getting that machine to run. I get it. I'm in that stage right now, and it has been filled with challenges.
Yeah, I could say really up to a few years to really get momentum.
It really, honestly, I've said that a single person by himself trying to start a business is minimum 2 to 3 years to really get off the ground, really get running, and really be established right. Luckily, since I'm in a partnership of 4 people, we can divvy up work. I've noticed that it has been growing kind of quickly, but that's because we have the manpower of 4 people all willing to put their heads together on something. So, that would be a second thing I would say that would be important for people through a downturn like this too, is make sure you have a good team of people around you can build with. Because if you have people who are not ambitious or not willing to put in the extra work during a period of time like this, I'm not saying they don't deserve to survive and get along, but they will have a lot of trouble in a very unforgiving situation, which is what we're entering into.
Oh, no, yeah, it's not gonna. No, it's gonna be very unforgiving.
Right.
People don't realize it.
We're if we're gonna understand why our grandparents were the way they were, through the Great Depression. You know, it's
Mhm.
we are going to
Dude, this is
understand
gonna harden a lot of people, which
people.
I
Yes.
kind of feel like we might need to feel it because
Mhm.
I mean I don't want to say that we become soft, but I feel like we do need to toughen up a little bit,
Yes.
especially
I'm
mentally.
big believer in that. Is that once again, it's another reason why I think our mental health crisis is also kind of out of control here, is that a lot of us haven't been able to, we haven't felt real adversity sometimes. So we don't know how to behave with small things.
Mhm.
And the more difficult of a thing you go through, the easier I think it makes it to deal with like the smaller things in life that sometimes compound or get on your nerves, or really just kind of press at you sometimes. If you actually understand how to deal with adversity and hardship, through
Mhm.
something big. I've been lucky to find that voluntarily through martial arts. I have situations where I'm in, I'm getting beat up. I don't know how to put it. And, but it's hardened me up to deal with the pressure and the panic and all the problems that come along with it.
Mhm.
It's a good thing to become stronger. If you,
Oh
something's
yeah,
hard and you survive, it's a good
like
thing.
Cody Rhodes said, my father said, "Hard times build better men."
Yes. Yes, absolutely. And we need strong men, we need strong women, we need strong
Mhm.
people right now.
Yes.
Um, that is the most important thing. And I think what's interesting during this period of time too, which I think will be interesting just socially speaking, is that more people are finding themselves aligned through this situation, because now we're no longer, while there is still you look at Twitter or you look at, social media, there are still people fighting frivolous fights over stupid, meaningless things. But as the
Mhm.
situation gets more serious, a lot of these frivolous things we don't agree on, we're going to start setting aside for what's actually important.
I hope so.
And I believe the people who are taking this seriously definitely will, because I've always considered myself a, not that I stand on anything, but I was always more left leaning in terms of myself, generally speaking. And I found a lot of common ground with people on the right in terms of just like trying to address life and how crazy this is now. And I'm
Mhm.
hoping that through all this craziness and through all this controversy and through all this just uncertainty, that we all find camaraderie in it. 'Cause I think that's one thing that at least bad times or hard times or just a shitty situation in general builds in people, is camaraderie that can transcend all the petty stuff that we get caught up in.
That's very true. Actually, like I had to make a reference to anime,
Yeah.
but Naruto kind of showed that.
Yes. No, no, absolutely. Yeah.
I mean, I'm not saying we need to fucking put our 12-year-old kids through war and stuff like that, but I mean,
I kind of understand now why, there was like a tradition of like entering manhood, you know what I mean? It's like they sent
mhm.
you out to like, go survive for a little bit and come back, and then,
Yeah.
you're a
Well,
man
if you think
now.
about
And
how things used to be before we became really like this three-tier society, like
yes.
kids were involved with the labor, like
Hmm.
what like more there are a lot of people living on farmland and stuff like that, and when it comes to
Right.
homesteads, like homes like that, kids were involved with a lot of the labor.
And that's really what I think a lot of the average middle class person is going to do, especially since there's a flight from cities right now, which is how crazy they're becoming. Homesteading,
Mm-hmm.
more rural communities, people who can get out, who are probably the former middle class, will be taking to a life like that. And I think that will build up stronger people over generations. I
Mm-hmm.
really do think that that might be a positive change overall for people. Because I know growing up in the LA area, basically, is very toxic out here. It's a terrible
Mm-hmm.
place, and you don't want to raise kids here.
No, it's the same way with Vegas, dude. Like,
Yeah, yeah,
I mean, it's called Sin City for a reason, first of all. So, I
absolutely.
mean, I mean, obviously, something like that's going to attract all sorts of toxic people.
Mm-hmm.
But like, no, this is definitely not a play. Like, this is like large metros like this, and you're where you are, and shit like that. I feel like
Yeah,
they're no longer really places that are really good for raising kids. It used to be
right.
good from a social aspect, a lot of kids in the
Yeah.
area and stuff like that. But like with the situation currently, how things currently are, like
Mm-hmm.
I'd be less worried about the social aspect when it comes to kids and more about the mental toughness aspects because
If you
they're going
think
to need it to get through these type of times.
that's actually more important, is actually being able to stay calm and not let your anxiety control you. Because I understand anxiety is a very real thing. And I know that building up a little bit of mental toughness doesn't solve it, but it can definitely help you in that process to at least get through life. And and I think the big thing too is that if you think about the social factor that you used to get from the cities, who needs that now? Look at what we're doing right now. This is it. This is the new social, you know what I mean? It's instantaneous, it's online. You don't need to be in a metro area to have that anymore.
I mean, it'll be the point where, a dad won't even have to whoop his kid's ass in this, in real life. He can just do it on Meta.
Oh, yeah. It's like, check the diaper in Meta. Make sure you're good.
Right.
Oh, God.
No, you're right. Though the social aspects, it's pretty much, with social media, despite how toxic it can be,
yes,
that's pretty much covering everything. It's gotten to a point where we don't need to be really in the same room to interact.
I mean, think of how many people you're in the same room with who are looking at their phone anyways, like.
Yeah, I know. That's always been a weird thing to me. Because, I've seen it doesn't happen as often as people make it out to be, but I have seen instances of people texting each other while they're right next to each other in the same room.
Right next to each other. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's not like they're doing secret texts. They're just like, they're having a conversation they could be having, like talking, but they were
with
just
words.
Text.
That's gonna be real interesting. This new generation is coming up that's grown up on the internet. They're gonna have a real interesting perspective on everything, and the way they grow up too. That's really, I wonder too, because their social dynamics gonna be different than us. Their outlook on life is gonna be different than us, which is like the situation that like Zoomers, even the generation after us are even facing. It's just, and I just wonder what this is going to lead to. I wonder how the future generations are going to find out ways to cope through all this and all this change. It's going to be difficult,
Yeah,
it's going to be very difficult.
That's why I'm afraid of things like, the metaverse and stuff like that. Because if kids start using that to cope with this, like you're going to have a generation of kids who've never left their room.
Yes.
Who've never experienced true life. Because they're like, well, with how things are right now in real life, I'd rather just stay here because I can control how I look to other people. I can control, and that I control how I feel to other people. I don't have to, and I can with the technology they're trying to work on, with the whole being able to even taste in the metaverse.
Right, like all that. Your senses get interacted with it. Yeah,
no one's ever gonna want to leave that world.
That's really what I worry about is as the situation becomes worse and worse for us, as there's becoming less and less reason to go outside because the outside is dangerous, it's expensive, you can't really do much. You're going to turn to the internet, which is a lot of what young men have done. Is gaming is probably the most showing tell of that. And there are a lot of guys who get lost in gaming where they lose track of days and weeks, and imagine a VR world where now you can be whoever you want and however you identify. And then you can just create a whole life for you that doesn't cost you nearly as much as to exist in real life.
Yeah, if you're losing track of a world where your eyes are presently in that world where you can look around you, think of what would happen if, think of how much time you lose track of with a device over your eyes, over your face, and you're in a completely different world, not even sensing time passing by at all.
Right. That's, and that's, I think if you want to talk about me and probably my biggest fear is, I guess, kind of like a WALL-E-esque situation. You know what I mean? Like when all the kids are in the pods, they're just distracted and they're fed junk food. And, you can talk about I bet you could build metrics and say oh, well, they're all fed and they're all technically housed and they're all, but quality of life, I think is, and once again, the main theme of this podcast and everything, quality of life gets lost every time we downgrade everything to try and meet this baseline of cheapest way of pacifying people. We all want to live a full, rich life, and this can be achieved. And I just worry about the bureaucracy and the situation what we live in now, preventing that for future generations.
Because Gala, it makes it seem like there won't be anything left for them.
Yeah.
I always keep picturing, people keep thinking about the Mad Max world.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, yeah, it's a possibility, but I feel like because of how far we've come with technology, I feel like it's more likely to be like, you're familiar with the game Cyberpunk, right?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I haven't played
it,
but
I
I know it.
I feel like it's gonna be more like that, where you're gonna have like basically these the major metros being completely overcrowded, being completely basically not even government run. They're all like, I feel like it's a chance. Well, no, I guess like, well, no, let me not go out. No, let me go off a different example. Have you seen the movie Dread?
Yeah, like Judge Dredd.
Yeah, like the not the Sylvester Stallone one, the other one.
Oh, okay. No, I've not seen another one. No.
Oh shit. Ooh,
Yeah.
You probably like that one. I'd say like that's how I actually picture the world being, like where basically, like, see, it takes place in the like basically dystopian world, and a majority of the population is in this like huge building. I forgot how many floors it is, but it's basically, but that's where basically a majority of the I guess you could say lower class and crime rate population is. It's just this huge building. Skyscraper. I forgot how many floors it is, but I gotta say probably about 100 floors. Just a couple. That's where they have stuff like I think they have like stuff like community centers and stores inside there and all that stuff. It's basically a building to keep the riffraff away from the rest of the city. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like that type of thing. But that's where I feel like that's where the world, because with bureaucracy interfering, I feel like they're going to try to do that type of thing.
I can see that. Yeah. Just more project housing, basically, where they stack you up. I mean, they did that in Chicago.
Actually, I guess a better example would probably be Ready Player One.
Oh, okay.
Where,
yes.
Where that one guy lives, where basically, it's trailer park, or not trailer parks, RV trailers on top of each other, basically.
Yeah.
Like, basically how I've mentioned it before, basically we're all living literally on top of each other, all confined in one small area and stuff like that. I feel like that's more of a possibility than the whole Mad Max scarcity, Badlands type of thing. Like, there will be scarcity, but it'll be the type where it's not really scarce, but it's being rationed.
Right. So I can understand like not being abundance of resources for sure. There can definitely be. I can see some parts of the country possibly having more Mad Maxes issues and some more rural parts, and then the cities being more like this like cyberpunk dystopian future thing.
Type of,
yeah. No, I definitely see that, and over the course of the next decade, I can absolutely see something like that happening. I always refer back to China, because they have smart cities. Everything's essentially tracking you, watching you. It's all tied back to your phone, all tied back to your QR code. Your money is digital. This is where I think a lot of cities end up going, is in this direction. And I feel like in that kind of infrastructure, most people will just, I mean, that's no way to live. That's certainly not a society that brings forth prosper and wealth for people.
We're kind of on our way towards what China's doing, because we have the FedNow bank accounts. It's funny too, because they mentioned that with that, there's no need for a central bank digital currency, but I'm like, no, this is just a precursor to it.
Exactly.
They're basically the whole selling point is the speed of transactions.
People like instantaneous. That's money is one of the few things in the world that up until Venmo and Zelle and everything came out recently, money still moves slow, even in the quick instantaneous digital age. And now money is going to come that way too. And that's really it's like, will we have freedom of our money? And it doesn't look to be like that at this point. It seems like it won't be. I do not recall. I believe China is actually implementing something about the digital yuan. There's like some stipulation where some of it will expire. Like they actually have put expirations on some of it now. It's not just readily available to you at all times, which that would change everything fundamentally about how people have to live at that point. Then saving doesn't become a thing anymore.
Yeah, it's basically it's basically having a coupon as opposed to a coupon or a pass as opposed to having actual money,
actual wealth.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I feel like that's where, we're kind of on our way with that. They're going to entice people with the whole fast transactions thing, with the FedNow thing. But eventually they're going to be like, well, how about, if you give up your right to physical cash,
mm-hmm.
how about we give you this digital currency? It transacts even faster.
Yep.
And you don't have to worry about currency, what's it called? Currency exchanges or anything like that.
Exactly.
It's automatic.
It's a universal that goes with you. Yeah.
And all you have to give up is your access to physical cash. That's it. That's all you have to do.
That's it. Just got to make sure it's all
there,
digital.
That's when they, that's how that's how I feel like that's how they'll start paying, unemployment and stuff like that. State.
Yes. That's what like I was about to say. Like all the what do you call it? Stimulus and whatnot. Yes. That definitely sounds to me like, because it sounds to me like we're going to be doing a lot more of that as we go on through the years here. And it's all going to be meaningless in comparison to like actually cost of living, but it will get people over to this new form of currency.
And then from there, that's when they have the control. That's when they can really, if you said something wrong on Twitter, well, we can lock you out of your account for 30 days.
Yes.
You said something negative to this person who happens to be a friend of the president or president's daughter. Well, we can take away this from you.
Yeah.
Or they can make it where a certain portion of your money can only be used for this amount of time.
Controlling how you spend it. Like that's I think this started back to I believe the first episode when we talked about where it's like it's not even about the money ideology of capitalism, socialism, communism. It's about free markets of exchange for goods and services. And we don't have that. And we're about to lose it, even what we have left of it now.
It's all getting absorbed.
It is
one entity. Well, it's multiple entities right now, but not multiple, probably 4 at most.
Yeah, I know, right? It's a handful of entities, really. Yeah,
a handful. Yeah, they all work for one entity, pretty much.
Exactly. That really is it. Like that's, I think the biggest concern that we have overall is that once again, middle class macroeconomics matters, because you being in the middle class goes away as we enter into this new world, because there is no middle class in this new world. That's this dystopian. It's a two-tier society. And unfortunately, I don't know what can be done to stop that, but awareness is step one, just so that at least when we start seeing this pivoting, and we even mentioned earlier in the podcast, like homesteading, getting away from the city, trying to, find your own plot of land and just get away from it all. I think that really is a lot of our best bet through this situation.
Yeah, actually, if you can even start some sort of form of self-sustenance, like even just starting like a garden, that'd be a good start to really getting through all this. Just really, I don't know what I guess education. Yeah. I feel like that's the number one thing that we can tell you. Educate yourselves as much as possible, whether it's on the current situation going on or what you want to do to really prepare for everything, and to pivot from where you currently are into a more favorable situation, or favorable, secure situation. Not secure. No, I won't say secure. Favorable. Let's say
favorable. Yeah. Security is something, unfortunately, our generation is just kind of accept that we don't get. I don't know many people who are like millennials who feel terribly secure in their situation. It's a lot of insecurity for sure. And I think that's, unfortunately, as the middle class dwindles, that just becomes the norm, is that we all just start living in an insecurity that definitely doesn't make the mental health crisis any better. So like we keep saying, first thing is be aware, because at some point we're going to watch this system start imploding on itself. We're already watching warning signs, and that's really when it's going to matter what you know and what you understand, so you understand how to move and switch when that time comes. Well, unfortunately on that, dystopian note a little bit.
On fucking bad notes, dude.
I know. I wish we had good news. I want to report good news, but we started this in a time where there is no good news. We are knee deep in it right now, and whatever the bad news is.
Yeah.
Like Greg always says too. You know, the bad news is what's keeping all this afloat at this point. If we didn't have bad news, all these markets would be tanked.
Mm-hmm. Dude, oh my gosh, how sick was it when at that one point where bad news was actually helping the fucking market rise? Like, you know, unemployment went up, market going up. Like, are you fucking kidding me?
Right. You know, and like people, this is why everyone has such a disconnect. And once again, why macroeconomics matters even to the average person. It's not just a rich person's game. This matters to you too, because this stuff affects all of us, how crazy this is. Like, if you don't know how this world worked before everything went topsy-turvy post-COVID, especially, you don't understand why this is all so crazy. It just seems like, oh, it's this, like, I guess this is how things are run. Like, no, this is not normal. This is not right. None of this is normal or right.
Like, not just known before this, but like, you know, that we've learned recently, you know, doing our freaking licensing exams. It's like, you know, we're reading through stuff. It's like, well, it was, you know, it was supposed to be this way, but it's not exactly like this way. Not really this way.
That was one of the best parts of us getting our license to sell funds, because it was like, you know, I know this to not be true, but the answer to pass is the thing I know to not be true. And I'm like, okay, well, there's the game. There's the game. There you go, guys. Go out. Okay, there's our advice for everyone. Go out and get your Series 6. You'll understand what's at least a general sense of what's going on out here. Yeah. And then you can use that information to help yourself pivot.
I want to do the Series 6, the SIE.
Yes.
That's pretty much where
the SIE, that really I feel like the SIE really should be a standard of like what we're shown, at least broad scope, in like an economics class in school. You know what I mean? You know, maybe not as detailed as we got it, obviously, to pass the SIE, but in broad scope, I think a lot of these things are really what should be presented to people so they understand what they're looking at when they hear financial news. Because right now, it's just, you know, stock market go up, stock market go down, and people say things, you know.
Yeah, exactly. They don't know, like, you know, interest rates go up, how's that affect anything? Fed, what's the fight? Like I can't imagine, like, you know, the entire country or majority of the country knowing what the federal funds rate is, or even like, or even what the repo market is, reverse repos, and all that stuff. Like, I didn't even know about any of that stuff until like 2019 stuff happened. I'm like, what the hell is a repo market? What the hell is this repurchase stuff? Like, what is going on?
And I remember we would talk about some things, like, and I knew everything from a headline perspective. I did not have a deep understanding of what all this was. I just saw things that I had just been watching for so long, these markets. I was just like waiting for an implosion moment. I was like, oh, look at these like crazy spikes. But now that I understand what all this is, if anything, it actually validates everything I said, because now it's like, actually the actual system is actually way crazier and makes less sense than I even thought it did beforehand.
Sure, you're like, I knew I wasn't crazy. I knew this fucking shit
wasn't crazy. You know what I mean? There was something very validating and all that, because I mean, at least now, especially doing all this during the pandemic specifically too, because if I had done this maybe say in 2018, 2017, I would have been like, oh, well, I mean, like, this goes against, like, what you're telling me here goes against what I see to be true from like the actual research I'm doing on my own. And now the research I've done on my own is actually coming like to kind of full circle, and I actually understand it now instead of just reciting back headlines of things. You know what I mean? So that's really been the best part about all this, honestly.
Having a better formal understanding of all this is very beneficial.
Very beneficial. It actually really, once again, should be something we teach everyone. Which is why, again, I think a middle class is a society of people who have a baseline understanding of economics. If I have to give the pandemic any credit, at least it got my brain shifted into high gear and went like, stop just, you know, dilly-daddling, seeing this headline here, spouting on social media here, like, go learn it, go understand it, you know? So
I'm glad too, because like I feel like, you know, So I would basically do the same thing, just kind of regurgitate headlines and stuff that I'd hear from like Gammon and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But like now I actually like, now I don't feel like, what do they call it? Imposter syndrome.
Yes, right.
I don't feel like I'm suffering from that now.
You actually, you don't feel like, you actually feel legitimate, like what you're talking about. You're not just some guy posing and flexing up here. No, I get that. That's a big thing, and a portion of that does come just the legitimacy of actually going through something and accomplishing something. So,
and I mean, I'm not sitting here thinking I'm going to be able to keep up with like Raoul Pal or anything like that.
Yeah.
But there's still stuff that goes in my head, and I'm like, fuck, dude, this dude's just.
Yeah, no, he's absolutely he's brilliant. He's one of the people I definitely take the most after. But I mean, to me, it's like the same thing as like I take a lot like with my jujitsu. It's just like, when I was a white belt and I walked in the door, it's like, I'm not going to go like when the teacher's teaching me, he has to teach me like literally like, here is like it don't be like in the financial world, be like, someone be like, okay, here's what a bond is. And then explaining like, you know what I mean? But at least I'm a blue belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu now, which means I understand all the basic fundamental stuff. And now we're just finding things that link together, understanding it as a whole, how it has a whole flow to it. And I think it's the same thing in finance now too. It's like, now that we understand what the baseline terms mean, the concepts, and how the rules generally work. You know what I mean? I'm not going to act like we're absolute experts in everything, but we do have an understanding of how the rules generally work. Now we can understand when plays are happening and what it actually means to people, and what it actually means to the markets.
Yeah, we're at least ahead of, I want to say at least 99% of the people. I hope.
I would at least put us above Jim Cramer's audience. So,
Oh,
bye.
Dude, did you know that someone made I don't know if it was a webpage or a Twitter that basically
Inverse Kramer?
Yeah,
Inverse Kramer. I follow Inverse Kramer on Twitter, and it is like one of my favorite accounts. And it like, I think they were starting like an ETF, like the Inverse Kramer ETF, and they're saying like it had like serious returns. I was like, bro, that's wild. I love how wrong that man is.
Right? And like, how? I don't know if it's blatant, like he does it on purpose to try to get people to lose money, or if he's just like, you know what I mean? Because I mean,
I think it is. I think
that's kind of how I feel too. Because he used to be a hedge fund manager, right?
Yeah. So he's just helping out his buddies. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
he's getting Main Street to just constantly be holding the bag wherever they go.
Mm-hmm.
That's
why I hope Main Street doesn't really listen to him, because.
Unfortunately, I would say your guy who's probably your average middle class guy, like, he's not terribly wealthy, he's not super well versed, but he has a professional job and he has a little bit of cash. Is that they probably are listening to Kramer. If we're being honest about it, that's his demographic. You know what I mean?
Because I mean, he is a mainstream figure and he's on a mainstream channel, so it
right.
But just sucks, man, because it's like,
God,
it's just like it's very predatory.
It's so it's just. Oh, how does he get away with being that wrong? And then like actually giving out financial advice, literally giving out financial advice on fucking TV and like being this wrong all the time and not like having repercussions. It's just feels damn near criminal.
Yeah, it does. I guess it's because the only ones, the ones who can, like, there's no one that can really actually call, like the ones who take his, like you said, the ones who take his advice are like the average middle class dude who has a little bit of cash. And I mean, if they make us think about it, it's not gonna really be heard.
Yeah.
But if there's someone like, more accredited who would have listened, then that's when things would have been a bit different. It's a bit different when it affects someone rich.
Yes, that is always it. I always go back to that Martin Shkreli dude who I always kind of liked him. He's kind of a troll, but I always going back to like, no, he didn't go to jail because he rose the price of the it was like insulin or something. I think he rose the price. It was some cancer drug.
It was the AIDS drug.
AIDS drug, yeah. So, and I was like, he didn't go to jail for that, man. That was perfectly legal. It was because he defrauded investors. It was because money got affected, like real money got affected. They don't care about us.
When you affect rich people's money, that's when you get into trouble.
That's when you go to jail.
Yeah, because I forget what company it was. It starts with a V. Was it Vanguard or something like that? No, it was a pharmaceutical company. But I think it was that same year or a few years earlier, they raised the prices on insulin by like 800%.
Yeah. They just do it like gradually. So like people don't notice because the insurance eats all of it. But then like he just did it openly. It's like, is it scummy? Sure. But I mean, like if you want to be real about it, like if anything, we should address it all around then.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And they do it under the guise, it's to raise money for R&D, but then you see that the R&D budget hasn't even gone up one bit. So it's like, no, it was just for the shareholders.
See, this has always been my real problem too, which is, like starting a business and everything in general, because I always call Elon Musk the king of this. It's no longer about building a good business model and being the best in town and having like the most products sold. It's about raising capital. Raising capital and writing off expenses, and that's the whole fucking game now. And if you think about the traditional person, that just seems so ass backwards to like normal people. That what I mean? I'm trying to just raise money to go into debt to buy things. Like it's not even about. It's like people think profit margin, and it's like that doesn't matter anymore. Money's so cheap now. Your profit margin doesn't matter anymore. Your money is meaningless.
Yes,
that's really like the end result of what we're seeing here is that the money itself is becoming so meaningless. Is that earning money is becoming meaningless. You know what I mean? The pursuit of it's almost becoming meaningless. It's trivial. It's just a matter of acquiring. And it's just, it's sad.
Man, at this point, I might as well start paying people in this.
I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if there's a time in the not so distant future where we're also burning slips of green paper to light our stoves like they're doing in Germany right now. Yeah. Yeah, man. Well, okay. Well, on that note, on that downturning note, once again, my name is John.
Seriously, we did it again.
I know we went negative. God, I'm not good. I'm trying to give.
If it was, everything was fine until you brought up Germany.
Oh my God. Oh, I sell on the fear porn, man. It's what I'm here for. Oh God. Yeah, but still though, again, like even though we talk about all these things are happening and there's a lot of like negative outcomes and negativity and bad situations, it's again becoming aware, facing the reality of it. This is going to be hard. It's going to be difficult. We're going to have trouble and we're going to have difficulty, but let's face it head on and let's be honest about what it is. And that's what's going to get us through this more than anything, than any positive thinking. It's really about just knowing what we're dealing with and being sincere about it. And I think that's what we're trying to reach people with here at Middle Class Macro.
Yes, exactly.
So again, thank you for joining us here on this episode. My name is John. This is Steven, my co-host as always. And we hope to talk to you all again next week. Hopefully we have good news, but if not, we will be here to report the bad news.
Yes. If we don't have good news, we'll just talk about the news.
Hey, there it is. Get that 4-4.
Yeah.
Hey.